So, allow me to take a moment here to find my words. This is not scripted. Part of my job is to model what I believe, and you might have differences of belief there, but what I believe is an authentic vulnerability. I think that we see so much, frankly, overindulgence in emotions and stories and the reasons why we're upset, and trying to figure things out and understand them, and also to endlessly processing and talking about our problems, and really staying stuck, ruminating in difficult emotions, and not knowing how to move through them. And then we also have the other end of the spectrum, which is we deny them, we shove them down, we push them away, we suck it up, we're tough, and we get tough, we're macho, and there's toxic masculinity, all whatever you want to call it. But I think that women and men and all people do this alike. But I think that right in the middle, we feel it to heal it. We acknowledge it's a strange journey, and the way in which our human brain is designed, and our emotions and our memories and triggers, it's all hooked up in very deep, vulnerable parts of us. Emotions are wired into a very deep part of our brain that is actually very much linked with our survival mechanisms. So when we have difficult emotional experiences, they feel literally like a threat at the survival level, and so they can be intense, and we need to know how to work with them. And so this message, it has some elements to it that are particularly specific to the people that are in the Mojo Maker Depression Slayer, but I'm also sharing it publicly because that's part of my mission in life, is to help people heal and thrive. And yes, I am so adamant about proactive tools and what's the stuff that we can do about it to cultivate happiness. But we also need to be able to tolerate, open up to, allow, and be with emotional distress in such a way that we do not get lost or crumbled up in it, but that we allow it to move. And when we allow it to move, we actually gain its wisdom, we gain its energy, and it enlivens and enriches our life. There is no such thing as an unvariegated kind of topography of bliss, as an old teacher used to say. That is not really what a healthy, fulfilling, happy life is all about. And in order to feel the happiness, and in order to feel the love, and in order to feel the joy, we need to be able to touch into the deep and the dark places that sometimes scare us, and sometimes feel very uncomfortable and very vulnerable and very raw. And so over the last couple of days, my daughter has been sick, and we've had to monitor her breathing very closely. And we all know that there are certain things going on in the world right now that makes these situations more alarming. But at the same time, it also hooks into a neurological network of experience where my son Finn had some early childhood illness that was extremely traumatizing for me as a young parent, and extremely difficult for me to digest and experience. And so all of that kind of got activated. And then, the way it works with triggers is like once the alarm system is on, it starts scanning for danger everywhere and anywhere, and it notices it anywhere and everywhere. So right before I was about to give my group last night, something else kind of triggered my alarm system, and I wasn't really able to fully digest it in time before I started the group. And so one of the things that I want to say to the people in the group is, maybe you didn't even notice. I'm pretty good at working things in the moment, but I was not my best last night, and so I am extending the length of the program 1 week. I think we got to a lot of important things last night, and we talked about a lot of important things and tools and things like that, but I just did not feel as cohesive and as coherent, and as my message didn't feel as clear and as powerful as I would have liked it to be. So I, out of integrity of me being my best and offering my very best to you, want to extend that program for one more week. And so that's just happening. Now moving on. So what happened last night though, after the group, is I got through the group and I but I was pretty frozen when the group ended. And so what happens is we have fight, flight, or freeze. And when our brain goes into freeze mode, it's literally something happens in the nervous system where our nervous system determines, well, this situation is overwhelming. It's too much for me to bear. I'm going to shut down. I'm going to start going into kind of a paralyzed, catatonic, immobilized state. And what is happening there is my brain is basically, the part of my brain that is active is the part of my brain that says there is danger about, and if I'm completely still, that danger will not notice me. It'll pass me by. And even there are some animals, like a field mouse, for example, that when a hawk is above, the hawk only sees motion, and the field mice, it freezes, and literally it becomes invisible to the predator. And so that part of our brain as human beings is there, and that part of our brain can become active. And so after the group, I was really frozen. Part of one of the things that we do for numbing as human beings is we go and we will often eat in a way that will help us, that will numb us. I wrestled with that a little bit last night. I didn't go completely down that track, but I definitely was like, I want a bag of potato chips. And so, but then my wife was trying to kind of be with me and comfort me, and she was massaging my feet, and I wasn't there. My eyes were closed. I was kind of catatonic, and I wasn't really able to engage with her. And I basically just kind of was able to say to her, like, I don't want to deal with this right now. And that was, and so she went to bed. I went to bed. And when I woke up this morning, I was still frozen. I was still very raw. I was still very paralyzed. And I didn't, that old familiar feeling, I didn't want to get out of bed. But there does come a time, and there's no magic pill for this. There does come a time where we have to say, okay, no, I recognize what's going on. My brain is in the frozen state. I cannot wait until I feel like it. I need to use the tools. I need to get to work. And I don't need to do anything overly heroic or macho or anything like that. But so, the easiest thing for me to do at that point, lying in bed, was to put on my headphones and do a yoga nidra. Yoga nidra, eye rest meditation, is a type of meditation that helps. To me, it gives me a very similar benefit to bilateral eye stimulation, EMDR. It also gives me a very similar benefit to deep REM sleep, where we are able to process emotional experience in a non-rational way. We activate parts of our brain that automatically process emotional experience. We don't need to specifically try to process the emotional experience when we enter into these brainwave states and brainwave capacities. And so I did yoga nidra, and then I got up and did my miracle walk. I went out and got my sunlight in my eyes. I went for a walk, and these things, there are detailed instructions and lessons about the yoga nidra, about dealing with emotions, about the miracle walk and what that means. I can't go into all of that here right now. But here I am. I just dropped my kids off from school. And now the other thing that is important to notice is that once we unfreeze, now the emotion that was underneath the freezing is going to move. And that's important. That's okay. We need to allow that. And so sometimes that's going to mean I'm going to feel the fear that I was trying to freeze, or that my body was trying to freeze me from experiencing. But in this case, it was grief. It was sadness. And so that means tears. That means driving my kids to school and listening to some music and crying. and my kids see me cry, and and there was also tears of beauty and joy, because I'm so grateful for how healthy and vibrant they are and for the opportunities that they have. And so it was a mix of tears of grief and tears of loss and tears of shedding, but also tears of beauty and joy and gratitude. And you're kind of going to know that you're moving through something and resolving things when there's oftentimes, for me at least, that mix. Okay. So just wanted to kind of model that experience for you. That's the last 12 or 18 hours of my life. And there's been times in my life where when that frozen state gets stuck, that's depression. When that frozen state lasts longer. And so there's been, so there's times in our life when we stay stuck in those modes, and we often will loop our thoughts. We'll loop and loop and loop and loop and loop, and we think more about the situation, then that leads more to the freezing, or the anger, or the sadness, or the fear, and then we have more anger, sadness, and fear, and we think more about why we're angry, afraid, and sad, and then that creates more of the emotional of anger, afraid, and sad, and we think what we feel, and we feel what we think, and we get stuck in this tide pool, in this loop, in this whirlpool. And it doesn't move. And that is where dis-ease or pathology or diagnosis starts to become relevant, is when these things get stuck. But when they move, when they flow, when we use tools to feel them, but feel them in a way that allows them to move and process and progress, not process. Process is fine, but I think that word gets way too caught up in the part that I'm not talking about, which is overindulging and getting stuck in worshiping and idolizing our emotions and our stories and our dramas. So that's the calming sigh of relief breath that we also learn in the program. Hope you have a beautiful day. Love you all. Oh, I'm supposed to sign off with this. My name is Mike. I'm the founder of the All Together Academy and Awareness Loving Life. Together we thrive. That's what it's all about, folks. Have a beautiful day.